They tell you to trust your feelings, to follow the crowd, to keep moving, even if you don't know where. That's how most men get trapped, confusing noise for truth, mistaking speed for clarity. But Machiavelli saw through the fog. He knew clear thinking wasn't a gift, it was a weapon. In these 3 parts, we'll cut away confusion, protect the mind from sabotage, and build a discipline of clarity that cannot be broken. Let's begin. Part 1. Machiavellian Clarity. The fog of thought. They don't want you to think clearly, not for a minute, not even for 10 seconds. Because if you did, if the fog ever lifted, you would stop. Stop saying yes out of fear. Stop staying silent to keep things polite. Stop chasing goals that don't belong to you. Stop craving the approval of people who hope you fail. More than anything, you would stop making decisions that betray your own advantage. And once you stop betraying yourself, you become very hard to control. That's why confusion is a tool, why noise is everywhere, why people are trained to believe movement means meaning. Emotion means truth. Machiavelli didn't live inside that fog. He cut through it. Ruthless clarity. Cold clarity. If you learn to think the way he did, your decisions sharpen, your mistakes shrink. Every error you avoid multiplies your strength. That's where we begin. Section 1. Emotion first, logic after. The problem isn't that people don't think, it's that they think in the wrong direction. They move backward without knowing it. They feel first, then they justify. Insult, retaliation. Anxiety arrow, imaginary threat. Attraction, invented virtue. The pattern is old. The feeling comes first. The story comes later. By then, logic has already bent itself to fit the emotion. That's why arguments drag on long after the truth has died. That's why people defend decisions they already regret. The heart pulled the trigger, and the mind ran to write the report. If your emotions are miscalibrated, your reasoning is doomed before it begins. A bad compass will not give you the right map. This is the trap most people live in. They walk in circles, convinced they are going forward. Machiavelli flipped the order. He refused to start with emotion. He began with outcome. What do I want? What must I protect? What must I avoid? Only after those questions were answered did he allow emotions to enter the room. And even then, emotions did not sit at the head of the table. They were tied, chained, forced to serve. Anger could be fuel, but only if the plan needed fire. Fear could be a brake, but only if the plan risked ruin. Desire could be a hook, but only if the plan required bait. Emotions as instruments, not masters. That was his discipline. That was his edge. Hold emotion until the outcome is clear, then release it with a leash. That single act of restraint, small, brutal, decisive, was the first principle of Machiavellian clarity. Section 2. Useful versus truthful. Here's where most stumble. They think truth and usefulness are the same thing. But not everything true is useful. And not everything useful is entirely true. You can lose years chasing truth as if it's a perfect diamond. You can bury yourself in proofs, evidence, endless arguments. You can win debates and still lose the ground beneath your feet. Because decisions aren't about reality. They're about consequence. Machiavelli understood this better than most. That's why he wrote, "It is more important for a ruler to appear virtuous than to actually be virtuous." He wasn't celebrating lies. He wasn't praising corruption. He was facing a fact. People don't respond to truth. They respond to belief. Crowds don't move because something is real. They move because they think it's real. Soldiers don't fight because the cause is pure. They fight because they're convinced it is. And in games of power, Reactions are all that count. This is where clear thinking begins to look cold. Because you stop asking, "Is it true?" and start asking, "What does it do?" A fact can be accurate and still irrelevant. A perception can be flawed and still decisive. The battlefield doesn't reward philosophers. It rewards tacticians. So if you want clarity, stop demanding certainty. You'll never have it. Demand consequence. Ask, if I believe this, where does it lead? That single question forces weak ideas to collapse under their own weight. It cuts away the noise. It strips the frame. You don't need absolute truth. You need a direction, a consequence, something you can bet your position on. That is Machiavellian clarity. Cold, sharp, unforgiving. But it works. Section 3. Information overload. Clarity isn't just about separating what's useful from what's true. It's also about resisting overload. We live in an age that worships input, data, content, opinions. People think if they just collect enough, they'll arrive at wisdom. But thinking clearly today isn't about finding more. It's about protecting the perimeter of your mind. Most people suffer from what I call saturation bias. They believe more input means better decisions, so they consume without end. Videos, posts, articles, podcasts, outrage, opinions, endless streams, scroll after scroll, and by the time they're supposed to decide, they can't. They're paralyzed, not because they're stupid, but because their own judgment is buried under fragments of everyone else's. Machiavelli would have called it dependency, intellectual dependency. You don't trust your own instincts, so you borrow them. You let other people's noise drown out your signal. But here's the brutal truth. Every extra voice you let in makes your own whisper harder to hear. And that whisper matters. It's the compass inside you. Without it, you'll chase goals you don't even value. You'll fight for trophies that don't belong to you. You'll exhaust yourself running someone else's race. Clarity requires silence. The kind of silence most people can't stand. The kind that feels empty at first, but sharpens over time. It's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing what to ignore. Because the mind isn't a warehouse. It's a battlefield. Every piece of information you let in takes up space, demands energy, shifts priorities. If you don't protect it, someone else will occupy it. And once that happens, you're no longer thinking. You're repeating. You're executing someone else's script. That's not clarity. That's slavery. Section 4. Ruthless filters. That's why the second Machiavellian rule of clarity is simple. Filter ruthlessly. Reflect selectively. Most people treat information like food at a buffet. They pile it high. They think more is better. But the more you consume, the less you taste. A clear thinker doesn't eat everything. He chooses with intent. Before you let new information in, ask 2 questions. Does the source have skin in the game? Will this information change my next action? If the answer to both is no, drop it, ignore it, delete it, let it pass by. You don't need more data. You need sharper filters. Because every voice you allow in competes with your own. Every fact you store without purpose steals energy. Every opinion you absorb without consequence dilutes your judgment. Clarity comes not from addition, but from subtraction. Not from collecting, but from cutting. Machiavelli knew this. He read, he studied, but he filtered. He wanted leverage, not trivia. That's the lesson. If it doesn't move the next piece on the board, it's just noise. And noise is the enemy of clarity. Section 5. Options versus opportunities. Once you sharpen your filters, something else happens. The fog thins. You start to see the landscape for what it is, full of options, but starved of opportunities. And most people can't tell the difference. They think, because something is available, it must be valuable. Because it's in front of them, it must be worth taking. It's not. Most options are traps dressed as choices. Jobs that pay just enough to keep you showing up, but never enough to set you free. Relationships that comfort you just enough to keep you from outgrowing them. Distractions that numb you just enough to make clarity feel unbearable. These are options. Easy, shallow, designed to absorb your time without ever multiplying your strength. Opportunity feels different. Opportunity aligns. It sharpens you. It doesn't sedate, it demands. It carries weight. It forces trade-offs. It makes you cut. That's why most avoid it. Because opportunity doesn't comfort. It confronts. A clear thinker doesn't chase what's available. He pursues what's aligned. He asks, does this option move me toward my long-term position, or does it just keep me occupied? The answer is usually obvious, but most people don't want to face it, so they fill their lives with options and call it choice. But choice without alignment is just another cage. Section 6. The Trap of Indecision. Now pause, because here's a mistake many cloudy thinkers make. They confuse indecision with open-mindedness. It isn't the same. Open-mindedness is strength. It's the ability to look at multiple ideas, test them, weigh them, then choose. Indecision is weakness. It's fear wearing a mask, fear of being wrong, fear of closing doors, fear of taking a stand. And the world loves to reward that weakness. It calls it virtue. Don't judge too soon. Be flexible. Stay neutral. But Machiavelli would laugh. He knew neutrality isn't noble. Most of the time it's just fear dressed up as wisdom. If you want to protect your position, you must decide. And you must decide before you feel fully ready. Why? Because perfect clarity doesn't come first. It doesn't arrive wrapped in confidence, tied with certainty. It comes after you move, you act, you hit resistance, then you adjust. Indecision never gives you feedback. Action does. The ones who wait for absolute certainty get devoured by the ones willing to move, willing to learn through impact. That's the truth. Clarity isn't a gift you receive. It's a scar you earn. So stop confusing hesitation with depth. Stop praising neutrality as if it's strength. Indecision is just another form of surrender. Section 7. Clarity is iterative. That's why the third Machiavellian principle is simple. Clarity is iterative, not instantaneous. You don't wait for certainty. You move. You take the step. Then you see what pushes back. That resistance tells you more than theories ever will. People who wait to be sure before acting get devoured by those who act and then refine. The battlefield doesn't reward hesitation. It rewards adjustment. Machiavelli knew this. He wasn't always right. He didn't need to be. What made him dangerous was his willingness to decide, to pivot, to cut and recut until the path sharpened. That's the point. Clarity isn't a light switch, it's a grindstone. You move, you scrape, you refine, and each move sharpens the next. Indecision rots in silence. Clarity grows in motion. Section 8. Urgency as manipulation. Still, even the clearest mind can be broken by urgency. Urgency is stronger than logic. It hijacks timing. It erodes patience. It makes you forget the long view and surrender to the moment. That's why so many power plays are wrapped in deadlines. Sign now. Decide today. Respond immediately. No time to think. No time to breathe. Urgency is manipulation in fast forward. The faster you move, the less you see. Machiavelli understood this tactic well. He advised rulers to create urgency for others, but never submit to it themselves. Urgency was a trap, and he refused to step into it. So how do you defend against urgency? You train the delay reflex. When pressure comes, don't ask, "What should I do?" Ask, "Who benefits if I act fast?" That one question changes everything. It yanks you out of their frame and puts you above the game. You see the strings. You see the hand pulling them. If urgency is their weapon, delay becomes your shield. Silence, pause, hesitation. These are not signs of weakness. They're tactics. They give you space to think, to choose, to let the other side reveal more than they intended. Urgency feeds on panic. Delay starves it. The player who controls time controls the board, and the one who refuses to be rushed is the one who always sees the ending first. Closing, the edge of clarity. And that's the foundation, the bones of it. You hold emotion until the outcome is clear. You separate what's useful from what's merely true. You filter ruthlessly. You learn the difference between an option and an opportunity. You decide before you feel ready. And you never submit to urgency. These aren't soft lessons. They don't make you comfortable. They aren't there to soothe you. They are there to sharpen you, to make you effective. Because clarity isn't a gift. It isn't luck. It's earned, step by step, iterative, ruthless, decisive. And when you start to think this way, when you cut through fog instead of drifting with it, everything shifts. You stop being predictable. You stop being easy to read. People notice. They can't always name it, but they see you move differently. Quieter, cleaner, sharper. They sense the weight behind your silence, the finality behind your choices. That's Machiavellian clarity. The edge that separates noise from signal, weakness from position. The first step toward power that doesn't burn out, power that lasts. And once you taste it, you'll never want to think any other way again. Part 2. Protecting and strengthening clarity. Clarity as a discipline. Clarity doesn't end with cutting noise. It doesn't stop once you separate truth from usefulness. That's only the beginning. If you want your mind to stay sharp, you have to protect it. Defend it like a fortress. Strengthen it like a muscle. Because clarity isn't a mood. It's a discipline. Machiavelli knew this. He lived in courts filled with betrayal, secrecy, and manipulation. In that environment, a soft mind was a dead mind. So he built practices, routines, filters, habits that kept his thinking clean when everything around him was chaos. These practices are what we turn to now. Section 1. Mental contrast and resilient decisions. Most people dream about winning. They picture the upside, the reward, the applause. They see the good part, the easy part. They ask only one question. What happens if this works? That's where they stop. Machiavelli didn't stop there. He asked the darker question. What happens if this fails? Not because he was negative. Not because he lacked ambition. But because he wanted his choices to survive. A decision that collapses at the first sign of failure isn't a decision. It's a gamble. This is mental contrast. You don't just look at what you stand to gain. You look at what you stand to lose. You measure not only the thrill, but also the wound. We love to romanticize the gambler. The man who bets everything. The hero who goes all in. But the truth is, gamblers don't last. They burn bright. Then they vanish. The dangerous minds are the quiet ones. The ones who calculate. The ones who ask, if I lose here, do I live to fight tomorrow? Every step they take is measured not just for potential, but for survivability. That's what made Machiavelli powerful. He didn't just think about winning, he thought about breathing after losing. Clarity isn't only about picking the right path. It's about choosing paths that don't kill you when the ground shifts. Ask yourself, if this fails, can I recover? If the answer is no, stop. If the answer is yes, move. That single pause, the willingness to face the worst, keeps your power intact. It turns fragile ambition into resilient strategy. And resilience, not risk, is what builds power that lasts. Section 2. Noise and mental saboteurs. Even the sharpest decision can be ruined by noise. Not by enemies, not by rivals, but by the small things you let slip past the gate. The ping of a notification, the buzz of a phone, the quick switch from one feed to the next. A glance at the news, a reply to a message, a scroll through a timeline. Each flicker feels harmless. But every flicker costs you. Every interruption cuts your focus into pieces. Every distraction turns your clarity into dust. And here's the part most people miss. It isn't just the moment you lose. Over time, you weaken the structure of your mind itself. You think you're multitasking. You're not. You're fragmenting, splitting yourself thinner and thinner until nothing has weight. Fragmented minds don't make strong decisions. They make reactive ones. They jump at shadows. They collapse under pressure. Machiavelli would have laughed at the modern man, scrolling for clarity, tapping for purpose, searching for meaning in a flood of noise. He knew a strategist never fights with an exposed mind. He never writes his plans in a marketplace. Clarity requires a throne room, a private space, a fortress where nothing invades. So you protect it. You cut off the saboteurs, you shut the doors, you sit in the silence until the buzzing inside your own head begins to fade. At first, the silence feels heavy, strange, empty. But stay with it, because only then, when the last layer of noise is gone, can you finally hear the one voice that matters, your own. Section 3. Hierarchy of goals. Even if you silence the noise, another threat waits, scattered aims. Most people don't know what they're optimizing for. They drift. One day they chase peace, the next, love. Tomorrow, dominance. After that, revenge. Their mind is in civil war with itself, and they call it possibility. They say, I'm keeping my options open. But open isn't freedom. Open is scattered. Clarity demands hierarchy. You can't serve 10 gods. You must choose one. Machiavelli understood this. He didn't waste time on ideals. He didn't build castles in the clouds. He looked at the terrain. He asked, what's possible here? What must I cut away? He knew power requires focus, a single aim that governs all others. That's what you need too. Pick the goal that rules the rest. Then prune ruthlessly. Because without hierarchy, your decisions scatter. You run in circles. You look busy. You feel active. But you move nowhere. A man chasing everything builds nothing. A man serving one aim builds power. It doesn't matter what the aim is, security, influence, freedom. What matters is coherence, a thread that ties every move together. Without it, your days fracture. You agree to things that contradict each other. You fight battles that cancel out. You burn energy on paths that lead nowhere. With it, every yes has weight. Every no becomes easier. Each move, even the small ones, aligns. That's clarity, a single path, a single thread, a mind that isn't at war with itself. Section 4. Self-Disillusionment. Even with silence and hierarchy, there's a deeper threat, the illusions you tell yourself. It's easy to spot lies in others. It's harder to see them in yourself. because your own mind will guard its stories like sacred relics. You'll tell yourself you have more time than you do. You'll believe loyalty runs deeper than it actually does. You'll imagine leverage you never had. You'll ignore the red flags that wave in plain sight. You'll overestimate your appeal. You'll convince yourself effort guarantees reward. These aren't small mistakes. These are lies, comforting lies, and comfort is lethal when the world deals in consequence. Machiavelli knew this. He understood self-delusion was the sharpest enemy of clarity. That's why he practiced something harsher: self-disillusionment. The ability to strip away the story, to rip out the comfort, to stand in the raw fact, even when it burns. Ask yourself, what am I pretending not to see? What truth have I already felt, but refuse to admit? The answers will sting. They will cut deeper than betrayal from others. Because betrayal from others wounds your trust. But self-delusion betrays your position. It kills your leverage before the fight even begins. Most people can't bear this level of honesty. They'd rather carry the soft lie than endure the sting of fact. They choose hope over clarity, and they pay for it, quietly, over years. But once you strip away illusion, something changes. Your decisions stop being hopeful. They become strategic. You stop acting out of fantasy. You stop chasing the world you wish existed. Instead, you move in the world that does. The harsh one, the one with limits, the one that doesn't bend to your stories. And when you operate there, you stop breaking. You adapt. You sharpen. You gain a power that doesn't vanish when dreams collapse. That's self-disillusionment. Brutal, unforgiving, but clean. It doesn't give you comfort. It gives you clarity, and clarity is worth more than any lie you could ever tell yourself. Section 5. Predictive clarity. When you train your mind this way, strip away illusions, silence the noise, anchor your aims, you gain something that looks almost supernatural. People think you can see the future. They call it instinct. They call it prophecy. They call it vision. But it's none of those things. It's just clarity. You've cleared out everything that clouds normal thinking. Reactivity, attachment, false urgency, mimicry. What's left is clean thought. And clean thought can see further. Not perfectly. Not like a crystal ball. But enough. Enough to keep you one step ahead while others stumble in fog. Because people are not as complicated as they think. They run on patterns: pride, fear, desire, insecurity, the need to belong, the need to prove, the need to hide. Machiavelli studied enemies this way. He didn't just watch what they did. He studied what drove them: their pride, their hunger to look strong, their dread of appearing weak. With those variables, he could predict their choices. You can too. Watch not only what people do, but what force pulls the string. Is it fear of weakness? Desire to impress? Boredom disguised as ambition? Once you identify the driver, the next move stops being a mystery. It becomes obvious. Most people believe decisions are random. They aren't. They're patterns replayed again and again under pressure. Predictive clarity means you don't get surprised. Betrayal doesn't shock you. Lies don't shatter you. Weakness doesn't confuse you. You expect them because you've already mapped the forces at play. It's not magic, not prophecy, just the sight that comes when the fog is gone. And once you start to see in this way, you stop reacting. You start shaping. Not by force, not by noise, but by anticipation. That's predictive clarity. Not dramatic, not mystical. Just clean. Closing, the edge of discipline. Clarity isn't an accident. It doesn't fall from the sky. It isn't a flash of genius that visits and disappears. Clarity is a discipline. You protect it from noise. You anchor it to one aim. You strip it of illusions. You build it into decisions that can take a hit and still stand. And once you do that, something changes in you. You stop reacting to every jolt. You stop being shocked by betrayal, by delay, by resistance. You start expecting them, planning for them, using them. That's the difference between an ordinary mind and a Machiavellian one. Ordinary minds chase comfort. They want to feel safe. They want to be told they're right. Machiavellian minds chase consequence. They want to know where each move leads. They care less about being praised and more about surviving the cut. One is sedated by options. The other is sharpened by discipline. And it's in that discipline where clarity becomes dangerous. Because a mind that is no longer shocked, no longer fragile, no longer distracted, that mind doesn't just see. It moves with purpose. And that's the kind of clarity that can't be broken. Part 3. Clarity as a strategic life. The price of clarity. Clarity has a cost. It doesn't make you popular. It doesn't make you easy to live with. The sharper your mind becomes, the more alienated you may feel. You pause when others rush. You walk away when others cling. You say no when others want yes. It feels like being the only sober one in a room full of drunks. Everyone else laughs, shouts, dances in circles. You stand still. You see the exits. You notice the fire risk. That's the price of clarity. And you have to decide if you're willing to pay it. Machiavelli would have said it plain. Better to be misunderstood with power than understood and powerless. Section 1. Mental layering. Most people see in one dimension. Flat, straight lines. They react to whatever sits in front of them. Someone criticizes, they defend. Someone praises, they glow. It's automatic. Reflex. But a layered thinker doesn't stop there. He holds the whole map in his head. Several versions of the same scene stacked on top of each other. He asks, what's happening? But also, what does this look like to others? He asks, what's my intent? But also, how will my intent be misread? He asks, what's the outcome? But also, how will they react to that outcome? This is mental layering. Seeing not just the play, but the plays inside the play. The shadow moves, the second order ripples. Take a public insult. The simple mind reacts, fires back, wants to win the room. The layered mind pauses. He studies the timing, the motive. He asks, why now? Who gains from this? What signal will my silence send? And sometimes silence sends the sharper blade. Sometimes patience does more damage than rage. Because while everyone expects a fight, the layered thinker lets the weight of restraint bend the room. The surface move often feels strong. Retaliate, explain, defend. But the deeper move is to measure what lingers after. What position you'll hold tomorrow. Not just what face you save today. That's the real edge. Not winning the moment. Owning the momentum. Layered thinking doesn't look flashy. It looks slow, quiet, even weak at times. But underneath, it builds leverage. It stacks advantage. And when the dust clears, the one who thought in layers is still standing. Not because he fought harder, but because he saw further. Section 2. Detach ego from outcome. You can't think clearly if your ego is welded to the result. If every win inflates you and every loss destroys you, you're not thinking, you're defending. A man who ties his self-worth to every outcome twists logic to protect pride. He can't admit a mistake. He can't pivot. He can't adapt. because to change direction feels like admitting weakness. But Machiavelli didn't confuse success with identity. He could reverse alliances, abandon a strategy, even betray yesterday's plan, because his pride wasn't on the line. His position was. That's the difference. Pride is fragile. Position is flexible. Detach your ego from the outcome. That's discipline. That's freedom. The discipline to admit the board has changed. The freedom to move without apology. Most people would rather lose while being right than win by adjusting. They cling to their version of events, their story of how it should have gone. That isn't clarity. That's vanity. Clarity demands the opposite. You shift. You adapt. You admit error, not to look noble, but to stay effective. It sounds simple, but it's rare. Most would rather protect their story than protect their leverage. They'd rather die proud than live strategic. But a clear thinker learns to cut the ego out of the equation, to look at outcomes as pieces on a board, not reflections of his soul. Because once you detach ego, mistakes no longer scar you. They guide you. And that's when thinking stops being defensive and starts being clean. Section 3. Perspective reversal. Most people try to predict outcomes by imagining what they want. They picture the prize, the applause, the payoff, then they plan from that angle. But Machiavellian clarity flips the lens. He asks the harsher question. If someone wanted me to fail, what would they want me to do right now? It's brutal. It forces you to look past your pride, past your hunger, past your hope. It makes you see the bait, the trap, the blind spot. You're offered a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Everyone's smiling, you're flattered, you feel chosen. Then you reverse the frame. If someone wanted to manipulate me here, what would they hope I believe? That I'm special? That I can't afford to wait? That saying no means losing forever? And suddenly, the fog lifts. You see the hand behind the curtain, the setup, the story designed to push you. Perspective reversal doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you immune. You stop being the mark who walks willingly into cages built for him. Most people only analyze action. Few analyze inaction. They ask, what happens if I make this move? Rarely. What happens if I don't? If I wait? If I decline? If I stay silent? But Machiavelli knew the worst consequences often come from inaction tolerated too long. From deals you let stand, from traps you never challenged. Perspective reversal is clarity at its highest level. Not just seeing from your side, but from the adversary's side. Not just asking, what do I want, but what do they want me to want? And once you see that, once you learn to think from the predator's chair, you stop being prey. Section 4. Strategic integration. Most people split their life into two piles. The good they want to remember, the bad they want to bury. Wins get framed, losses get locked away. But Machiavelli thought differently. He didn't discard failure. He didn't ignore betrayal. He didn't cover up humiliation. He treated them as data, as intelligence, not something to erase, but something to absorb. That's strategic integration, folding chaos into clarity. You get betrayed. The ordinary man asks, why me? He sulks. He curses fate. He tells the story until it hardens into self-pity. The clear thinker maps it instead. What signal did I ignore? What incentive did I underestimate? What blind spot did they exploit? Betrayal becomes instruction. Your plan fails. Others collapse. They label it a dead end. But you dissect it. Was my timing wrong? Did I misread leverage? Did I act from ego instead of necessity? Failure becomes refinement. This is why clarity grows stronger under pressure. Every blow is another layer of armor. Every loss becomes part of the blueprint. Most people grow weaker from mistakes because they rush to forget them. You grow stronger because you fold them in. Think of steel. It's hardened by fire, hammered, folded again and again. That's what a mind becomes when it integrates pain. Anti-fragile. Not just unbroken, but sharper. Confusion grows in avoidance. Clarity grows in confrontation. And here's the twist. Once you integrate your scars, they stop bleeding. They stop pulling you back into old stories. Instead, they become signals, warnings, triggers that sharpen instinct. You remember the time you said yes when you should have said no. You remember the moment you hesitated and lost leverage. The pain returns, but now it isn't emotional. It's strategic. It guides you before you repeat the same mistake. That's the Machiavellian way. Don't bury the wound. Weld it into the structure. Turn it from weakness into code. Because once you do, nothing is wasted. Not betrayal, not failure, not even humiliation. Everything becomes a piece of clarity. Section 5. Presence shift. Clarity isn't just a mental state. It's a presence. You can feel it before a word is spoken. When your mind is clean, you walk differently. There's no rush in your steps. No nervous energy bleeding into the air. You sit still. You listen. You let silence stretch. You speak less, but each word lands heavier. You don't argue to be understood. You don't explain to be accepted. A simple no is enough. No edge, no panic, just final. You enter rooms without needing to prove anything. You don't chase approval. You don't flash credentials. You don't fill the air with noise. And because of that, people notice. They can't always name it, but they feel it. The difference between someone who memorized answers and someone who's lived them. Between someone who knows and someone who understands. That's what clarity does. It shifts you before it speaks for you. It changes the weight of your silence, the gravity of your gaze. Most people think presence is about style, tone, posture. But presence built on clarity is simpler. It's the absence of confusion. And that absence feels like power. Section 6. Ideas have owners. Machiavelli never trusted ideas at face value. He didn't ask, "Is this true?" He asked, "Who benefits if I believe this?" Every value, every rule, every narrative. Someone wrote it. Someone profits from you following it. Ideas don't float in the air. They have fingerprints. They serve an agenda. You're told to forgive quickly. Sounds noble. But who gains from your quick forgiveness? The one who wronged you. The one who escapes consequence. You're told it's selfish to put yourself first. Who gains from that belief? The one who needs your labor, your energy, your time. The one who feeds while you starve. You're told to feel guilty for choosing your own path. Who trained you to carry that guilt? Family? Church? Culture? A system that survives by keeping you compliant? Clarity means you trace ideas back to their source. You audit your thoughts the way you'd audit corrupt accounts. You don't just ask, "What do I believe?" You ask, "Whose voice is this in my head?" Because until you do, you're not thinking. You're rehearsing. You're executing someone else's script, written long before you were born. And that's the quiet tragedy of most lives. Not that they failed, but that they never asked whose story they were living. Closing, the sovereignty of mind. This is the final layer, the last cut. Clarity isn't just clean thought. It's sovereignty, the quiet rule over yourself. Because if you don't govern your own mind, someone else will. That's the Machiavellian truth. So you stop chasing emotions that never lead to action. You stop collecting advice you'll never use. You stop making decisions to look good, to be admired, to be praised. Instead, you start making them to protect your position, your advantage, your survival. And once you do, something shifts. You own your mind, fully, brutally, without apology. From that place, you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to defend. You don't need to rush. The war is already won in your head before a single move is made on the field. That's clarity as a way of life. Not gentle, not noble, not decorated in virtue, but untouchable. And untouchable doesn't mean safe. It means steady. It means no one can pull the strings inside you. No bait, no flattery, no guilt can move you off your ground. A sovereign mind is the rarest thing in the world. And once you build it, you never give it back.